Oh, that's a little loud. Howdy, ladies and gentlemen, and Happy New Year. Just got back from NAMM out in California. Saw a lot of old friends, new friends. It's always a great time of year. People that make a living online with their instrument in their hands. There aren't many of us out there that do it actually for a living and are full timers. And it's the one time a year when everybody gets to get together and actually see somebody that understands what they do for a living, because most of us live in a place where we're the only ones that really do that. So it's great. Great players. It's just a really, really good time. But NAMM's also a lot like Vegas. Best part's leaving. It's overwhelming. It's a couple 100,000 people or 150, who knows how many. And it's always just craziness. But we get to play guitar, we get to drink beer, we get to see friends and have a good time. So anyhow, when I was out there, I had been in a little bit of a rut this past year. I'm sure a lot of you can relate, where you just feel like you're not playing anything new. You're stale and you just don't really know what to practice. So The videos that I chose to do out there, I asked some of the people that I really look up to, good players, about something new to try out. And the one I just posted yesterday features my good friend Tim Pierce. And Tim Pierce is the man. And Tim, you know, if you watch his video, one of the things he says is he likes to have one good sound and try to get 10 different levels of tone, 10 different levels of sound from your actual pick, from your actual attack. And to practice being diligent, picking hard, picking soft, being deliberate with that in a practicing environment. So check this out. Oh, yeah. Thank you about the Ravens. Jesus, how bad was that? I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen a team that good just lay an egg that bad before. Actually, the only one that comes to mind right now is when we went to New England. I forget how many years ago it was, but when we had Ray Rice, and I think it was the first or second play of the game, he just runs the whole thing back to the house. I was in LA for that game. That's probably 2012. I don't know. Or 10. Jesus, I don't know. Regardless, I'm going to do a little bit of practice right now of what Tim Pierce recommended. And I just have a quick little 2-chord vamp. I have A major and G major. And I'm going to practice, not thinking too much about the notes or whatever, but practice dynamics. I'm going to consciously go back and forth between loud and soft and make that the purpose of this practice session. It's really helped me, and Tim's a great player. If you watch his videos, you'll notice he really does this all the time. So let me turn my standby back on because it hums a little. Here we go. Oh look, it's still queued up. Isn't that nice? So you got A, G, Why not, right? And so that's a really cool thing to practice. Just when you're working on just any type of jam, accentuating different beats to be loud and soft. Actually, let me take it one step further. Check this out. This is something I do almost every morning. So I do this approach, but I do it with my basic finger exercise. So check this out. If I do I'm just going 1, 2, 3, 4 on each string. Now, there's 4 beats because there's 4 notes, 4 fingers on each string. So I'm going to accentuate the first one, make it louder, and the other 3 quiet. This is the easiest one to do because it's the most obvious, right? So that's like the first note of the pulse, right? What about the second one? Bum, 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 right? So. You hear that? And so what about the third one? Bum, 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 right? Right? And the last one. Each one has their own feel, their own kind of flavor, right? And practicing that as something you practice, where you're pushing on and off dynamic-wise of different beats on purpose, is like Tim says if you watch the video. You know, that is how you take regular lines and make them come to life. So if you just have a line like if you pick them all even, right, and you don't have any differences in between them, it's very stale. Whatever the line is, but if you choose to accentuate certain ones, right? All of a sudden it carries a cadence like your voice does. Your cadence, you know, you don't typically speak in a monotone the whole time and never change anything. It moves around. And so that's a way to practice it. Hi from France, good to see you. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to share. I'm gonna have a bunch of videos coming out with different players, some different advice for the new year, for those of you that wanna try some new stuff. I'd love to open it up for some questions. I got my loop pedal out here, and I'm open to any and anything you'd like to talk about. I'll play for a minute, and I'll see if anything pops up on the screen. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. I see something up there. Don, how do you like that Hollow Body SE? Dude, I'm very surprised about this. This is really a nice guitar. I've actually never played a hollow body before. I should say I've never owned one. I've picked one up, but I've never owned one. I've never had the desire to own one. PRS was nice enough to let me borrow this one, and so this is the SE2, and the SE Hollow Body 2, and I gotta tell you, it feels unlike anything I'm used to playing. Mostly, the way the string tension feels, it keeps tune perfectly, and its pitch. It's so easy to bend in pitch. You guys that know me well on this channel, you'll know that I'm not much of a gearhead from the technical aspects. So I don't know what the scale length is or what makes it what it is. So I generally tend to speak from a player's perspective. And when I pick this up, this feels like a standard PRS neck. I'm not feeling anything different there. The pickups sound great. Clearly, it's very. It's a hollow body, so you can hear it. Clearly, it vibrates more, and it when you have lots of gain on it, it feeds back easier because it starts to ring and hum. But the thing that I notice is that the string tension, it really, really feels like it just rings and rings and rings and sustains, and it stays in tune as good as any guitar I've ever played, and it bends to pitch as good as any guitar I've ever played. So I'll show you what I mean. Like it just. I feel like it's just solid as a rock, with the open strings. A lot of guitars, they're just, even when you play open strings, you still gotta coax it with vibrato. You gotta be very careful of, especially when you're recording, the pressure on the guitar, because it's so easy to pull out. But this, just with nothing on it, I mean, there's no ripple in there at all. And with bending, I mean, I just feel like. I just feel like with a lot of guitars, especially ones that you haven't played before, it's very, it's either really slinky or really stiff, and it's very hard to get exactly on pitch when you bend. I mean, it's hard anyway, but it's easier on this guitar than the other guitars I have. Like, it's easier on this one than all of them. It just is. I feel like. Now, the other thing I noticed that goes along just with this, with the string tension and the neck, is that it has play in it the way that a bolt-on almost does. Like, it's lighter. I have a video where basically when I got my 594, which you can't see in the shot, where I said the thing that really got me to fall in love with the PRS stuff is that 594 because it changed the way I did the vibrato, the way that it responds is it unlike so more sensitive than any other guitar I've played. It made me start doing a lot of the violin vibrato, like up and back as opposed to side to side. Um, this guitar isn't like that. This guitar is like it's like the Silver Sky I have, or every other guitar that I have, but even more so. It feels like it really wants to. It feels like it really wants to not just have the up and down vibrato, but it makes you want to do that Clapton style vibrato, almost where the hand isn't moving, but the neck is in your hand. Almost like the string is anchored to your finger and it's just so light that you're just kind of pushing up and down and the guitar is moving. Where on the heavier instrument like the 594 that I play, that's not the case. When you go up and down like this, it's almost way too noticeable, and it really forces you to be much more subtle with your vibrato. And that's how I feel about this guitar. You know, the pickups sound great, not a surprise. It's beautiful, not a surprise. It's light. It rings like a bell because it's hollow, not a surprise. It's got plenty of punch. The neck feels great, not a surprise. The two big takeaways for me, it's just that it really stays in tune. It's easy to bend and slide in pitch. It's not pitchy. It's not too rubbery. It's not too stiff. Like, it's a real player's guitar, but with a lot of forgiveness in it. Like, it is. You could definitely go and play with this out somewhere, do recording. I mean, I haven't been able to put this down. I really like this guitar. And the best way I can describe it is the string tension. Just from here to here, it just feels like complete rails, but super light underneath. It's just very different. I love it. I might be a hollow body convert. Maybe this is a hollow body thing. Maybe I need to try a bunch of them. All right, let's see what we have here. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Joe. Let's see, Felipe. I want to, if that's how you say your name. Thanks for jumping in. I want to start learning to play guitar, even make it a professional thing, but I feel like I'm a little late. I'm 23 years old. Dude, you're not late at all. So not only are there so many great players that started later in life, one of my favorite things to bring up about whenever this subject comes up is Pat Martino. Pat Martino, if you don't know, one of the all-time great jazz guitar players. Like, all-time great. And he actually had to learn guitar twice. And he arguably became just as good both times. And you say, how's that possible? Well, when I was in GIT, he came and did a master class. And I guess he always tells this story. But forgive me, I don't remember if he had an accident or I feel like it was a bad car accident. If anybody knows, let me know. But he lost all his memory and didn't remember. Not only, I think he had a car accident, was in a coma for a long time, and lost like 15 or 20 years of his memory. Like, they thought he was going to die. If anybody knows the details, please post it. But this is totally true. To the point where he tells the story where he came out of it, and not only did he have to start remembering who his friends and family were and everything else like that, and he hadn't played guitar for God knows how long, so he lost, vast majority of this. People had to tell him, yeah, you're this famous jazz musician, and he would play records to him, and he didn't know that was him. He couldn't identify his own playing. Like, so many things we think we spend a lifetime cultivating that are ours. You know, that's something that is in the fingers. It's connected to the muscles and the tendons in your ears, in your brain. You'd think that that's something that just once it's in there, it doesn't go away. But it wasn't. And he actually, at the age of, God, again, I don't want to get this wrong, but you know, I feel like he was 50 or so. He had to relearn how to play guitar by learning all his own stuff again, reforming his own style, his muscle memory, and everything. So he actually did it twice. So you're 23, you can absolutely do this, man. And for all you guys, no matter how old you are, there's a video. It's the first one if you go to my channel subscription page that just says how to practice. You don't need an hour a day. It's all about repetition and not duration. 15 minutes a day is better than 30 minutes every other day, is better than 2 hours once a week. The more times you pick it up is more important than, or sorry, how many times you pick it up is more important than how much time you actually spend practicing. It's the cumulative that makes a difference, especially in the beginning. So I wish you luck, man. You can definitely do this. Free to be me for life. Hey, thanks. I appreciate that. Tim is the man. Tim is great. Here's a good story about Tim Pierce. So when I first got started in this online endeavor, I live in Maryland, so I got to see Paul Reed Smith out because he has a band that plays. And I approached him and said, hey, this is back in 2012 or 13 or something like that when I first got started. And I was like, hey, you know, guitarists should come with a way to learn them. And he was like, no. Okay. And I kept going up to him, and eventually, after him telling me no a bunch of times, he goes, listen, you're nobody. Why would I work with you when I can work with Tim Pierce? He's the best in the world. I should work with the best in the world. And I was like, okay, well, that is a valid point. And so I just shot Tim an email, an ice cold email, and said, actually, Marty Schwartz gave me Tim's email because I told Marty the story, and he was like, oh, you should tell Tim that story. So thank you, Marty, for that. And so I shot Tim a cold email, and I said, hey, Paul Reed Smith won't work with me because he said he'd only work with you because you're the best in the world. And I put my phone number in it. Dude calls me in 2 minutes. Doesn't know who I am. I don't even know if I even have a YouTube channel at this point, or at least not any subscribers. I was just doing my website and doing Google and you know, stuff that didn't work. Calls me, and he goes, hey, are you coming out to NAMM this year? This is my first NAMM, so 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever. Invites me to his house, spend the whole day with him, play guitar, hang out, just at the drop of a hat. So as nice as you think he is, and as good as a player you think he is on camera, he's even more so in person. He's a real treasure, a real gem. I would encourage all of you to, you know, learn as much as you can from him, because he's just cherished in this community. Very lucky to call him one of my friends. All right, what do we have here? I want one of those hollow bodies, but the neck's too thick for my smaller hands. You know, have you played one of these exactly? Because I feel like I've played really big, like Gretches or some other really large hollow bodies, even like the Ibanez ones, and I felt the same way. This feels, it doesn't feel that much different than my other PRSs, and besides the Silver Sky, obviously. It really doesn't feel that much bigger. And I really don't have big hands at all. You can look at it in perspective to my pick. I mean, it's not like I have these huge giant fingers. My fingers are probably 3 picks deep, so like, you know, I'm with you. You've played the CE and you like it. Wide, thin, interesting. CE's great guitar, man. You know, I like bolt-on stuff. I like those necks. I generally like thinner stuff, like this bullet I have back here. That neck's like an absolute toy. I'm not even sure it's there. It might just be my imagination. I love that stuff. Substantially harder to play, substantially easier to press things out of tune, to bend out of tune, to not stay in tune, and all of the intonation issues and everything that goes along with that. Where this is just a totally different guitar. Totally different guitar. All right, I'm going to play a little more. I'm going to pick a different, make a different loop here, and I'll open it up for another question or two. We can go on for a little longer. Thank you guys for joining in. Happy New Year. Let me know what's going on. We can talk about anything you want. Let's go. Let's see. Kind of screwed my loop up. And I see a question. Yeah, we can meet in a few years. You can meet in a year. Yeah, you have a Squier Classic Vibe Telly that has a thinner neck profile. Yeah, you know, those things are, they're crazy fun. And they sound super different. I mean, Jesus, let's see if this thing's even in tune. Probably not. Sounds like a no. But like, you can see, I mean, that thing is like very, very, very thin. But I love this guitar. But you hear how, you know, it's so easy to be pitchy with your vibrato and your bends. It's like a noodle. It's like a toy. You have to really, really, really be reserved and not try to push it too hard. And if you try to do a little violin style vibrato, I mean, it's there. You hear it, but it doesn't ring. It doesn't have the sustain. These thin neck bolt-ons have that sound that I love and that neck that I love. It's really just about the neck, but it's a totally different beast than something like that. It's a totally different guitar. But like I said, the first thing I noticed when I picked up that guitar is that just the way the action is, the way the string tension is, the way that it bends, it's very, very easy. It's very forgiving for bends, for slides, for staying in tune. Like, it is much easier to sound good on something like that than something like this. I mean, this is just a blunt force instrument. It's just wood screwed together. But it's also literally my favorite guitar in the universe. So make of that what you will. You know, I generally like a little fight, you know? I generally like my guitars somewhat unplayable by other people. Call that unreasonable of me, but it's kind of true. But this is just an incredibly playable guitar, and it's like $1,100 or something. I don't know. It's a great guitar. Bald and Bearded, how are you, sir? I have been seeing you post a fair amount of comments, and I generally appreciate you watching and being so supportive. I really mean that. So let's see here. I'm starting to add dyads and thirds to my improvising, but you're welcome, brother. But it doesn't come in smoothly during the solo parts. Can you give me a few tricks, please? All right, so the obvious place to start here is to start, when you add in dyads, it's going to be two notes in a chord, in a harmony, right? Whatever that harmony is. And the best harmonic place to start is, all right, I'll get to the thirds and sixths. Let's start with the first one first, because this will actually answer both questions in its own way. We're gonna get into it. So let's say you have a line. Let's say we are in the key of D, and you have a melody, and it starts on the root. This is real basic stuff. So you're gonna go. So you're just going root, second, third, major third, down to the second, and back to the root. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. So let's say there's your line, right? So you're improvising, and that's your melody line, okay? The obvious place to start adding in a second note would be one of the other notes that is in that chord. So if you're in D, your one chord is obviously D major, your two chords E minor, three chord is F sharp minor, and so we're basically just building chords off each of the notes in that key. So if you're going to add a dyad, you're just adding one of the notes, so it's two notes at a time. So let's say you play the third on top, so it's D and F sharp, E and G, right? F sharp and A. So you're getting two of those notes to get that harmony of that line. So instead of you're getting right? So you're just adding you're pretending that each one of those notes in that melody is a chord. And so you're playing the little piece, that little dyad of the chord that you're playing over. And so if that makes sense to you, basically, when you want to add triads, you're just adding the other note in addition. So a triad is a root, third, and a fifth. So if this is roots, this is root and thirds, this is a root, third, and a fifth, your triad. So D, E minor, F sharp minor, E minor, all right, so you want to do more bluesy stuff. Okay, so you can get those to sound good. Good, you get this. See, I'm not exactly sure where you are exactly. Let's say you're doing a fast 12-bar blues. How would you add them in there? So again, there's a bunch of different options. If you want to just add basic double stops, so if you want to just add, ways to fatten up your blues leads, like let's say you're in A minor. Common places people add double stops, playing these two, or even these two. This is a good one right here, even though that's not in your A minor pentatonic scale, doing that. Basically, usually fifths for stuff like that. Your interval sets. So let's say you're going stuff like that, and here's your A. A lot of people, you'll hear them go playing that fifth behind it. But basically, you just want to visualize. You don't have to think about it that much. You just visualize this scale as sets of 2. And all those different combinations that are in there. So same thing up here, you know. You can make it sound real consonant and keep them as fifths like that. You can separate them. But all you're doing here is you're just looking at the scale. In this case, just the pentatonic scale is a good place to start. You know? So you have these. And any combination of those. You just want to get used to mixing and matching those. And as far as sixths goes and thirds, the best way to look at them, in my opinion, is thirds, because the third is always what creates the function of the chord. And so it's easiest to just have the function lead. So for example, if I'm playing a blues in C, right? Or I'll keep it in A, right? So a common thing to do would be this. Right? So you could look at that as, you know, sixth, like, but this is really just the third of A. It's C sharp, and this is A. So that's A and C sharp. So I'm looking at that as a root and a major third. And the next chord in that key is B minor. So I'm looking at this as I'm just leading first inversion with my third. There's D and there's B. It's the third first. And then as you go up, right, C sharp minor. And, oh shoot, I hit my thing. Hold on a second. So, you know, while it's easy to look at this as sixth, they are the same thing, just inverted. But generally speaking, it makes much more sense to just look at it as the third. You're leading with the third. It's just an inversion, if that makes sense. So in what context would you aim at the sixth specifically? Yeah, you always end up with the thirds too. Yeah. I generally don't focus on the sixth in that way. I think that people generally like to think, you know, sixth string down. I think that it is an easy guitarist mentality to think that this must be a C sharp something, right? And so because C sharp is in the bass, but unless you're playing over a C sharp 6 chord, you know, when I see A and C sharp and A, I'm thinking that's A. That's A major. That's what that is. A major is far more common than a C sharp 6 chord, or minor 6 chord, or however you want to call it. And that's just reality. You know, 9 out of 10 songs. You know, 90 out of 100 songs. you see an A and a C sharp and a chord, and the C sharp's going to be the major third, and the A is going to be the tonic. So especially if you're playing an A blues, anytime you see a C sharp, you're tonally thinking A. So it's not going to be, C sharp minor 6 that you're trying to imply. Dude, no, you're just leading. You're just leading with the third. So unless you're literally playing over a 6 chord, a minor 6 chord, and you're trying to have that sixth, you're trying to have the root on the low string or in the bass and the sixth in the high string, you're pretty much always just going to look at it as thirds and roots. I hope that makes sense. That's just practically the case. All right, anything else up there? I'll go on for another minute or so. Cool, glad it's helpful. I don't always know what's helpful and what isn't. I'll play for a minute here, see if anybody else comes up with something. All right, see something else up here. Easty Beastie. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. How do you maintain focus on finishing to learn songs? Cheers. Dude, it's hard, man. I'll tell you what. It's one of the things I'm trying to work on this year, is no matter what it is, finishing what you start. When I was in a full-time working band, when I taught tons of students in person, I had to learn so many songs very, very quickly. And so when you do that, you don't get into the nuances or the intricacies of the song, especially new ones, because most of the time you don't have time. And so what you typically get is your broad stroke. Here are the changes. Here is the basic, hits, the basic form, etc., etc. And that's generally the type of stuff that is taught here on YouTube, because if you got into all the nitty-gritty details, you'd have hour-long videos for every song. Even really basic ones, if you were to go all the way down to the bottom and figure out every single bass tone and keyboard overlap and interval and do it perfectly. So it's really hard maintaining focus to finishing songs because you pretty much always know you're not getting all of it. And so for me, I break it down into a couple key things that I must have before I move on and say, I understand and I have captured the essence of this song, and I feel comfortable bringing it to life with the band, teaching it to others, and improvising over it, capturing what the song's all about. And the way that I do that is one, and you know what? I can't put a link in the description now, but if you guys go to my channel or you just go on YouTube and you search how I learn a song for my band and you search Guitar Gate, you'll see me give an example of this. Basically, my goal is to determine, what makes the song what it is. So the rhythm, the harmony, and the melody. I always, whether it's a guitar-centric song or not, I always get a good feel of what the drum groove is. I get all the chord changes and all the hits, the form, that type of stuff, but also the melody. I learn the melody of every single song that I learned. In other words, what is the singer singing? What is the stuff that gets caught in your head? Learning the melody to every song and figuring out, how it works over the chords and writing that down. Like, oh yeah, in the chorus, I hang on the 2 over the 5 chord, blah, 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 and that, or whatever that stuff is, that's stuff that I make sure to focus on. Aside from that, when I'm sure I have the harmonic and melodic and rhythmic structure of the song under my fingers, but no details of whatever, then I do 3 things. The first thing is I always listen to 3 examples before I move on from a song. The first one, and I keep track of all of these as I go through. The first one is the original recorded version. The one that if you're playing this in a club somewhere, what is the version that contains all the stuff people need to hear? So if there's a specific hook, a specific intro, right? A specific solo that if you don't play it, like Sweet Child of Mine, the people are gonna, feel like they got gypped and you're bad. The quintessential iconic stuff, whether it's production-wise, whatever it is, every song's different. I start with the original recorded version and I make sure I have that stuff that absolutely must be in the track when we play it. And then based on how many pieces are in the band, we decide who does what. But you start with what is the fundamental core stuff that must be in there. So you don't want the audience to feel like they're gypped. Then 2, I listen to the band cover that song. Some bands like to do their stadium stuff, their stage stuff to be exactly like the studio. In other words, they like to go in the studio and just do what they do on stage, record it and go home. A la, Van Halen, especially the early ones, live in studio. But even still, when you watch them do it live, you realize not only might the tempo be different, but how do they get into the song? How do they get out of it? What's the ending? Is there anything form-wise that they do differently than in the studio? Because it makes it better live. It's better for a crowd. There's many examples of this, but how does the band do it? And then 3rd is I check and see, and this is always the hardest part, if there's a band out there that has the similar pieces that you have, meaning is it a guitar and keyboard? Is it 2 guitars, no keyboard? Is it 1 guitar? Is it a power trio? You know, whatever it is that your band is made up of. Do you have 1 singer? Do you have 3 singers? Try to find a band that has the same makeup as your band, and find them covering it, and say, how do they arrange it? And then you take those 3 and you make an amalgamation of those 3 for your band. And you say, okay, this is the song, this is the feel, these are the changes, this is the melody. Bam. Okay. We have this many pieces. We want to make sure X, Y, and Z, whether they're done in studio or on stage, don't get forgotten, because they are the hook. They add something special. They make the song what it is. We have to have this in. Figure out who's going to do that, and then arrange it specifically for your band. Once I have all that down, then I feel comfortable moving on to the next song, even if I don't learn it note for note of what the studio version is doing. You know, what's important to me beyond the rhythm, harmony, and melody is from an arrangement standpoint or from a soundscape standpoint, or a signature solo or a signature intro. Like, you know, if you're doing In the Air Tonight, you have to get that drum fill, right? Or if you're doing Whiplash, you got to start with that intro. There's so many examples of what these things could be. Some songs just don't make sense without harmonies. So if you don't have harmonies, don't sing it. Some songs just don't make sense if you're a male vocalist, or vice versa. So don't do it. Unless like you can really sell it. There's so many examples of things like this. There's so many songs where, like, yeah, if you don't have synth, maybe you shouldn't do it. Or don't do it unless you have synth, or vice versa. And I know, you know, some people might not feel that way, but I do think that you should always play to the strengths of your band, and give yourself the best chance to be successful in pulling off tunes, and pulling off tunes purposefully. So, moral of the story is, when I'm learning songs, I'm learning them for a band. I'm learning them for a specific band, for a specific slot in a song set, for a specific group of people, with a specific sound. And, you know, I listen to the original version, I listen to the original band cover it, and then a cover band cover it that looks like my band. And when I feel comfortable that all the pieces are in place, then I move on to the next song. And that's that's how you maintain motivation. That's how you know when it's okay to move on. So you don't stay on one song for a year, which you could with any song, which is really true. An a cappella version. Yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with that too. It's very song dependent. I can't stress to students enough that it really just comes down to what your goals are. If you are in a band and your goal is to gig, that's a very different goal when learning a song than if you're producing a fully produced recorded track of that song in your studio, and you have unlimited access to different sounding instruments and styles and people that could come in and play. That's a totally different conversation, because then learning the song means mic placement, how they get the specific sounds. Watch Rick Beato's channel. Like, what's so great about Rick is that not only does he talk from the melodic, harmonic, rhythmic standpoint, and you know what makes the song great from a music standpoint, but it's production. Learning the song from a production side is a totally different animal. If you're gonna sing it a cappella, again, totally different conversation. So it all comes down to goals. But yes, my background is playing with the band, And so when I learn songs, it's thinking about how I would play them into to a band, with a band. And when I teach people songs, like if you watch any of my song lessons on here on YouTube, I teach from that same perspective of, if you were to cover this, not this is note for note how you play this, but this is what makes the song what it is. These are the things you have to have. This is the melody, this is the harmony, this is the rhythm, this is the stuff you have to, that the listeners are expecting to hear. Because I think that's the practical thing we should all focus on. Matt, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're welcome. You're welcome. Easty Beastie, yeah, you're very welcome, dude. You're still working on the Son of a Preacher Man video. So, dude, perfect example. You know, that song, if you don't have that intro, that, if I even remember, that, yeah, whatever, it's been a while. If you don't have that intro pretty much dialed in, you know, you can't just really jump into that song. It doesn't have the same effect, you know? If you don't have that one-step modulation in the end, anybody listening to that song who's not a musician, even though they could never tell you it went up a half step, you know, they'd be sitting there at the bar drinking their beer or their glass of wine, and they'd be like, I don't know, man, they just don't have it. It doesn't sound the same, right? And so many people who cover tunes like that, they cheat. They don't modulate a half step up. They just jump in. They don't do those little signature riffs because it's harder. It takes more thought, and it's you know, they think people don't really notice. And it gets you in and out of the gig when you, especially if you're a solo player and you're playing, you know, 100 songs a night. But that stuff matters. It really does. All right, I'll do one more, and then I'm gonna call it because it's we're getting up there. Who's got something? That's a very funny question, and I saw you jump in and defend me, and it's very, very appreciated. I had about 5 seconds. I was literally standing there, and they were like, "Hey, Premier Guitar needs someone to play guitar. Are you warmed up? How your fingers doing?" And I was like, "Fingers are fine, but what am I playing? What do they want from me?" And they were like, "Oh, you have to talk about the new stuff for the new Silver Sky and the new Hollow Body." And I was like, "Well, I haven't played the new one." I was like, "What's different?" And they told me a couple things, and they're like, "Okay, go." And I was like, I'm like gonna get half of this right." And they were like, "I know, just make it sound good. Just play something." I said, all right. So that's exactly what happened. I didn't know exactly the answers to all the dude's question. I didn't think the dude really cared, frankly. I think he was just doing his job and cranking through as many videos as he could as NAMM, so then he could get back home and said, "Hey, I cranked out 115 videos instead of 113. I think he just cranked through it, frankly. But yeah, that stuff happens. You know, when you happen to be there and someone asks you to do something, you know, you do it and you get what you get. All right, well, anyway, I'm going to call it, leave it there. It's been over an hour. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sure you could tell. Yeah, I'm sure most people told. Like, there was a lot of, there was one comment that was like, "Yeah, you don't, you know what's different with the frets." And I actually said, "Yeah, I don't know what's different with the frets." And so someone lit me up over that. But that's the internet. You get what you get. No harm, no foul. Thank you all very, very much. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the channel, and I'll see you guys real soon. Take care. Bye.